Uhuru, brothers and sisters. Thank you, Chimaringa, for the invitation and the introduction. Definitely want to thank the International People's Democratic Uhuru Movement for pulling this meeting together. It's a very important meeting, a very important discussion that we're having this afternoon about these egregious attacks on African people that are taking place all of the time. Chimaringa mentioned that I am currently facing charges that have been brought upon me by the Hillsborough County State Attorney's Office. I'll give you some more details. I'll say though, first of all, that I'm facing some pretty serious charges that could put me in the Florida State Penitentiary for 5 years. And if I'm convicted. It all started on July the 2nd when, well, actually, let me say it this way. It started for my household on February the 27th when we discovered that our Rottweiler JJ was missing a toenail on his right front paw. And so upon noticing the missing toenail and what looked like, I guess like raw flesh on his right front paw on the 27th of February, we immediately took him to the vet on the 28th of February. The vet prescribed JJ some medication, suspecting that it might have been some kind of infection. So he was given antibiotics and also given steroids for the inflammation. We were advised to treat him for 7 to 10 days and bring him back after that first treatment. We did that. The thing on his right front paw was steadily growing, and he was losing more flesh on that particular area. So upon taking him back to the veterinarian at the prescribed time, it was suggested that we treat him again with antibiotics to see if that would work, and we did that for another week. It did not work. We went back to the vet. They said that it's quite possible that he had some kind of cancer, perhaps bone cancer, which would have caused the toenail to be lost and the growth that was happening on his toe to occur. They recommended amputating. JJ was about 13 years old. That's pretty old for a dog. And this type of surgery could cost $2,000 to $3,000 easy. That's the surgery alone. That does not include the aftercare that would be necessary. So that was one thing to be considered. The other thing that was to be considered is that JJ, being such an old dog, might not be able to deal with the anesthesia. He might not wake up. And also, at that point in time in his life, would such a procedure save his life, prolong his life, or somehow increase the quality of his life? So we began seeking second opinion, because this is a big decision for our family. The entire time, though, this thing is constantly growing on his foot, and we're providing pain treatment for him, cleaning the wound, and making JJ as comfortable as we could while we tried to make a prudent decision for JJ and our family. So we finally came across a veterinarian who was willing to look at JJ without all the red tape of having him snipped. Like there were agencies who would not see him unless he was castrated and stuff like that. And so when we finally found someone who would see him, it was in late April, at least mid-April. And so we saw this vet, and he suggested that amputation was probably not a good idea, that we should euthanize JJ or take him home where he could live out his last days with his family. And he predicted that it would probably be about 2.5 months before JJ died. So just about 3 months later, JJ lived longer than 2.5 months. We were taking very good care of him. He learned how to adapt to this thing on his foot. He was while he was indeed losing weight, because he was an old and ill dog, he was, still taking in food, still moving about, still happy, not showing any signs of pain. And I was in constant consult with a veterinarian, a mobile vet, who was going to euthanize JJ at the appropriate time, when it became obvious that that's what needed to happen. On the 2nd of July, because I was so moved by the experience that JJ was going through, I posted a picture of JJ and his front right paw on Facebook, and just said that I'm both hurt and inspired by JJ's will to live even through what he was having to deal with. That was on the 2nd. If you recall, I think the 2nd was like in the middle of the week, like a Wednesday or a Thursday or something like that. Anyway, the holiday was over the weekend, so there was no action at my house over the weekend. But on that Tuesday, the 8th of July, Animal Services people came knocking at my door, saying that they had received an anonymous complaint about animal cruelty. And I wasn't home at the time. My young daughter was, and some other family members were. And by the time I had arrived, the person had issued a citation, maybe not a citation, it was an official notice that had some requirements on it about taking JJ to the vet and bringing JJ, and she would come back to investigate or something like that. And I guess her business was concluded, or at least seemed to be. And I approached the truck just to kind of see for myself what had occurred, instead of getting it from secondhand from my family members who had spoken with her directly, so I could be as clear as I can about what had happened. And so it wasn't a really friendly conversation. And the woman ended up calling the police and threatening to either have us arrested or if we didn't turn JJ over to her immediately. And I questioned why all of a sudden this was necessary, when we had been given some official notice and some time frame other than right now to deal with the issue. And at that point, the police went back to her, and she changed the document around or something like that. And so they left. And 2 days later, returned with about 15 police. Full body armor type stuff. It was a spectacle. Chimaringa mentioned that we were at this forum on this past Thursday, and the police chief, Jane Castor, was there as well. And she said, in response to a question, that it's not routine to send special tactical forces out to serve a search warrant. Remember that, Jim? Yeah. So, but at my house, they sent what they call the ROC squad, R-O-C squad, rapid offenders something. I don't know what the C is for right now. And like I said, it was about 50. I was able to count 15. So there was at least 15 police at my house. And they also brought in some like federal agents and stuff like that to serve a search warrant. To take my my dead and dying pet, who had been a family member for so long. And I just wanted to let him live out his last days, at home with people who loved him. I mean, that's it. And so during this siege on my house, as soon as I walked into my yard, I was arrested, pushed around, shoved around, pulled to the police car, kicked and stuff like that. And in the process of them kicking me, they say I kicked them. And so that's a battery on the Leo charge. He hit his foot on mine. It's like if I was to punch somebody in the face, I say, well, his face hit my fist, right? And so that's the kind of thing that they've done. They charged me with, I had a python in the house as well, that they said I should not have had. And so I ended up charged with possession of prohibited reptile, some kind of sanction for the cage where the snake was held, some other kind of wildlife sanction. Those were all 3 misdemeanors. They offered me some kind of thing that would have me hooked up on court costs. But we rejected that and set a trial date. When we went to trial, the state decided to drop all the charges on the misdemeanors. Still pending though, because I was charged with those 3 things, as well as resisting or opposing an officer without violence, battery on a Leo. So I was not violent, but I battered the Leo. So I was charged with resisting or opposing without violence, battery on a Leo, and an aggravated animal cruelty charge. The resisting or opposing charge is a misdemeanor. The other 2 charges are felonies. I just had a first appearance though on those 3 charges. It appears that the only charge that remains to be a felony is the battery on a Leo charge. So they've reduced the aggravated animal cruelty charge to a misdemeanor charge of animal cruelty. However, I just received a letter the other day, like I said, which states that I can do a maximum sentence of 5 years in prison because of the battery on a Leo charge. Just, you know, I know a lot of people in this room are familiar with me, but I want to say for people who may be watching or may watch this one day, that, you know, as the police person said, the chief of the police said in the forum, what happened at my house was not routine. It had nothing to do with some great love that the state has for my dog or some great compassion that they have for JJ. Nothing to do with that. As a matter of fact, you know, they harnessed him and dragged him out of the house. You know, they didn't have so much compassion for him that they put him on a stretcher or picked him up in their loving arms and carried him out. They dragged him to their van and, you know, in a harness. So I'm convinced, number one, that it was my actions on Facebook, you know, just sharing what I thought was an inspirational story with people who need inspiration so often, and that I believe got the attention of the police, because we have, I have been in constant contention with the police, the Tampa Police Department, since I've been back home in that city since 1998, constantly struggling against the police brutality, the police occupation, under the leadership of the Uhuru movement many times and of the African People's Socialist Party. You know, fierce campaigns were waged during the struggle for Lisa Wilkins's children's justice after they were killed by Jennifer Porter. You know, and several other significant struggles were waged in Tampa by myself and some other comrades. So I'm no stranger to the Tampa Police Department, and I'm convinced that it was that act of mine that got their attention and led to this fiasco that we're now caught up in. So as it stands, my next court appearance is the 4th of November. It's a pre-trial hearing. In the meantime, though, what people can do, because I'll say this, I'll assure you that all of the evidence is on our side. All of the evidence that I was not cruel to JJ, I did not neglect JJ. I mean, it's all there. I mean, from the medical records to the bank records that show our expenditures for the treatments and the medications, the records of the consults that I had with the several veterinarians that we spoke with throughout that time period. It's all there. There's no evidence to the contrary either. And so based on that, we should win. We have a videotape, or at least video footage. I'm kind of old school, you know, we used to be on tape, but I know it's digital now. So we have video footage of my arrest, of the police walking me to their car. I'm in handcuffs. I'm surrounded by 15, you know, all around. Then there's 3 of them who have me. You know, there's one on either side and one behind me. And I'm in handcuffs, and they still suggest that I somehow, you know, physically harmed them. And but we have video that should win, right? But the reality is, I live in Hillsborough County, which I'm sure is not unlike any other county in the world. But Hillsborough County, what I know for a fact, is the place where Jennifer Porter could run over 4 African children, kill 2 of them, and never serve a day in jail. Never. And she probably wasn't in the jail cell for 30 minutes when she was booked. You know, they walked her in the back door, you know, processed her and walked her right back out. She didn't do a day in jail. Killed 2 African children, never did a day in jail. That's the county I live in. The state attorney who brought charges against me, you know, prosecuted that case, you understand. Hillsborough County is the place where Deborah LaFave, a white woman who admitted to raping a child over and over again. She said she did it repeatedly. I mean, she admitted to it. And never served a day in jail, or at least not in prison, although it was an offense punishable by prison because her attorney convinced the judge that she was too pretty to go to prison, right? So, you know, that's the place I live in, you know, where like $1 million music maker like Buju Banton, who they can't find no dope, you know, there was no money exchanged. They just say he was talking about some dope, and he talked about it on the phone, and when he was talking about it, he might have had a gun. So now he has 10 years in prison, right? You know, this is a rich Negro, right? You know, popular, you know, Grammy Award-winning Negro, but they can some kind of way, you know, find a way to put him in prison, but these people go free. Just recently, there was this case, I don't even know if you can call it a case because no charges were brought, where this family went to their family member's house. I think their name, the Shepherds, at least the father's name is Michael Shepard. A little 4-year-old white boy named Logan was mauled to death by 2 pit bulls. His mother and his father, Michael Shepard, took the boy over to his relative's house where the dogs were to go in the room and talk. And although they admitted that at some point in time during the talk they smoked weed, the state attorney, Mark Oba, who has been the state attorney through all the cases I just mentioned, Jennifer Porter, Deborah LaFave, Buju Banton, he's still the state attorney now, said he wrote a letter himself, right? This is the head guy. He wrote a letter himself that said they can't find anything to charge them with. They can't find any reason to bring charges against these people whose child was killed by the dogs. The state killed the dogs. They can't find no reason to bring charges against this family because they thought that the dogs were caged. So it's not neglect because they thought they were caged. Imagine that. You know, so when when people leave babies in the car and they die, and you know you have to get some kind of charge, you can just say, well, I thought the baby wasn't in the car, right? So that's the same kind of thing they're saying. We thought the dogs were locked up, so the state attorney said we can't charge them. And since they smoked all the weed and we can't find it, no, it's in the letter. It's in the letter. You can Google it. You can Google it. He said they smoked it. They told us they smoked it, but we couldn't find it, so we can't charge them. Yeah. Yet and still, there's no evidence of any abuse or any neglect on my part for JJ. No evidence whatsoever. As a matter of fact, there is evidence to the contrary concerning this battery on a Leo charge, but they could find some kind of way to charge me. And mind you, it took them 9 weeks to bring charges against me. I don't know if anybody in the room has been arrested, but I've had the privilege of being arrested at least a dozen times, and it's never taken them 2 months to arraign me. So they've been fishing around. You know, the documents they sent me have been manipulated. Copies of the documents they sent me have been manipulated. The story certainly has been embellished on their part. So they're working diligently to win a conviction. Mark Oba, I heard him say one time when he was attempting to get reelected successfully, say that 90% of the time when people stand across from a judge or across from him in front of a judge, he wins. 90% of the time. And that also coincides with a stat that 90% of the people who are currently hooked up in the prison system some kind of way took a plea deal. 90%. So my first appearance, they offered me 24 months on probation. We rejected it, and we're looking forward to going to trial. We're going to fight it because we are innocent. We are not guilty of battery on anybody, and certainly not guilty of doing anything harmful to JJ, who was a dear member of our family that we love so much. And if you have the time, to reach out to the state attorney's office, there's a phone number you can call, and it's area code 813-272-5400. And just call and say, hands off Life Now. And you can say whatever else you want to say. If you have somebody who's hooked up in that, 813 272-5400. Yeah, no problem, no problem. One more time. Yeah, no problem. Let me know when you're ready. 813-272-5400. That's the state attorney's office of Hillsborough County. That's Mark Ober's office. You know, call and ask to speak to Mark Ober himself. And you probably won't be able to, but you can leave a voicemail. And enough phone calls and emails. I'm not sure of the email address right now. I'm sure that you can easily Google it though. It's the Hillsborough County's state attorney's office. But emails and phone calls saying that we demand justice in this case, I think will definitely help us stay free, because we don't want to go to prison. However, I realize this. That's the worst thing they can do to me. The worst thing they can do to me is send me to prison where I can organize some more Africans to the revolution. You understand? It's the worst thing they can do. And so while that's not where we're trying to go to organize, we are standing firmly on the fact that we know how snaky and sneaky the state is, but we believe that that it's incumbent upon us not only to resist in the streets, but to resist in the courtrooms as well. And we're going to make that fight, make that struggle, and I definitely would appreciate you, comrades, doing any and everything the International People's Democratic Uhuru Movement suggests that we do as we make this struggle occur.